Have you ever wondered why your vocal recordings sound thin, muddy, or just off in general? There's a good chance it's not your bars, it's your recording space. Home recordings can sound horrible for reasons that artists don't even think about. Today I'm going to change that all for you, and the last tip has saved thousands of home recordings. Alright, so the first thing is the level of your recording. So when you're recording, make sure on your interface you're not blasting that shit. So when you listen back, you want to make sure it's not hitting above 0 dB and peaking out on the levels. Most interfaces these days have a little indicator on them. So when you're recording at a good volume, it'll have a green light or something like that. And when you're starting to clip and hit above 0 dB, the light will turn red, or there'll be some kind of red indicator or something like that. Now you're better off recording at a quieter volume, as it's easier to bring up a quiet vocal and just turn it up, but you can't save a loud recording, as once it's clipped and it's all distorted, or even if it's slightly distorted, that shit can't be fixed. So make sure that you're recording at a good level, usually around halfway or at like 10 o'clock on the volume knob for your microphone is a good starting point. Now on top of the level of your microphone, something that can help is not standing too close. So obviously if I get this right now, this is way too close and this is way too far away. So you want to kind of find a good balance of space. Usually people say you do this, and it's around that. That's how far away you want to be from your microphone when you're recording. And if you're too close, the pop filter's not going to stop the P's and the T's and the harsh sounds and stuff like that. Now, a good little tip on top of that is if you're rapping or you're singing and you know that you've got a loud part, maybe you're going to sing a bit louder or you're going to start rapping a lot louder, move away from the microphone just a little bit if you're going to increase your voice, because then that way it kind of steadies out the volume. All right, another thing, don't be recording in like the bathroom or something like that where there's a lot of room echo and room reverb. That's just going to ruin the recording, and that stuff can't be saved. You can't save a shit recording. If you're recording fucking outside and there's birds singing and you got people in the background, it's very, very hard to take that out. You want to start with a good foundation with a nice clean recording, and that's going to make the end product that much better and magical. Now, recording in your bedroom is usually sweet. Obviously, just make sure it's not a completely empty room. You want to have some furniture around. Obviously, you probably got your bed in there, maybe some other stuff, and that's going to help absorb the sound of your vocal. So when there's an empty room like a bathroom, your voice is going to echo and you're going to hear that back in the recording, and that's just going to completely ruin it. Also, you can invest in some soundproof foam. You can see a little bit there. That's just a bass trap, but the big square blocks of foam, you can put that on your walls or behind where you're going to record with your microphone. And that's going to help with the sound absorption of your voice and stop that reverb. Now, one thing that I know helps a lot when recording as an artist is you want to use some kind of preset, maybe with some effects and stuff. So when you listen back to the recording or while you're recording, you can hear a little bit of reverb, maybe some delay, just maybe some slight compression as well, as that's going to sound closer to the end product when you're recording, and it'll keep the vibes high. When you record completely dry with no effects or anything, it's easy to sort of get put off or think that you're not performing as best as you can. Whereas, if you listen to a lot of professional vocals, when they're completely dry with no effects, it kind of sounds the same. Like it sounds very bland, very flat. There's not much going on. And then you add all the effects and stuff like that and it sounds magical. Now, keep in mind when you do record with effects and that sort of stuff, make sure before you send it out that you turn all those effects off, and then you send the engineer a completely dry vocal so that they can add the effects and everything like that. A lot of artists think that us engineers are fucking absolute wizards and we can just fix everything. When you get a recording, it's an audio file. So if there's effects in there or people talking in the background and all that sort of stuff, that kind of stuff can't be taken out. So make sure there's no effects when you send out the vocals, and just obviously, start with a nice clean recording. Now, if you got some homies over while you're recording at home or whatever, make sure that they stay nice and quiet while you're recording, because again, people talking in the background underneath your vocal recording, that stuff is very, very hard to take out. So make sure everyone's nice and quiet and the sound's isolated, and all you can hear coming out of the microphone is your vocal. Now, rolling off that, make sure when you're recording that you're using headphones. You don't want to be playing it through the speaker, because again, that's just going to bleed into the mic and ruin the recording. Ideally, you'd want to be using closed back headphones, which I believe like most headphones are these days. So the sound's isolated in the headphones. You don't hear it sort of coming out the sides of the headphones. They're sort of more for mixing. They're called open back headphones. So you want to be using closed back headphones. And again, you don't want to have the beats super, super loud, because even then it might still bleed out of the headphones and into the mic. Now, it's not the end of the world if you listen back to your recording and you can sort of hear the beat in the background, because it's just going to be drowned out in the actual beat when the mixing process is happening. But obviously, the best recording isn't going to have any kind of beat or anything like that in the background. But again, it's not the end of the world, as it sort of just blends in with the beat that's there already. But if you want the best standard, then make sure that, yeah, the beat's not bleeding through the headphones into the microphone. Now, obviously, when you're recording, try not to be too drunk or off your head on drugs. Some people say that it makes them record better, each to their own, but you don't want to be recording one night like while you're super drunk and then the next day listen back and be like, damn, that was fucked. I didn't say my words properly, or you didn't perform the vocal the best way that you wanted to. Maybe it makes you record better if you're fucked up, you know what I mean? Like, go for gold, do your thing. But I know a lot of people that like to just keep a steady head and just smash out the recording nice and clean, because they know that they can perform it well when they're not, tipsy or drunk or, on drugs and shit like that. Now, the number one tip that I have for recording at home is, if you don't have a booth or anything like that, put a blanket over your head and then over the microphone, and that's going to help isolate the vocal. Obviously, the best thing to use is like a thick doona blanket or something like that, because that's going to really absorb. If you just use like a thin sheet, I guess that'll sort of help, but it's not going to do a whole lot as it's so thin. So, the vocal's still going to travel through the blanket. But yeah, so just make sure that the blanket that you're using is nice and thick. Obviously, if it's a hot day or whatever, you may not be able to use it, but sometimes you just got to fucking grit your teeth and, go through it. So yeah, a blanket over your head, over the microphone, and that's going to kind of create a little portable booth for you. Now, it's very easy to just build your own booth at home. You can just use some PVC pipe. You can kind of Lego it together and build a booth, and then just wrap that in a thick blanket, like a moving blanket, or again, like a doona. And that's, honestly, I know a lot of people that do that, and it works really well for a vocal booth at home. There's heaps of YouTube videos online about, how to build your own vocal booth at home, and you can seriously do it for around $100 or even less. And it's really not that hard. It'll take you like maybe a few hours to go out, buy the supplies, and then put it together. And it's honestly an amazing investment. These vocal shields that you kind of see, you can buy online, they do kind of work, but they're seriously not the best thing. I would highly recommend building your own booth at home. Great investment, and it works really, really well. Now, if you don't want to do any of that booth building stuff, at the end of the day, you can always just go into your closet where you've got all your, jumpers and your shirts hung up, and you can just stick your microphone in there and then record your vocals into your cupboard, because it's a nice small space and the clothes are going to do a really good job at absorbing that vocal. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something. If you have any questions, just drop them below and I'll get back to you. And if you've never been to a studio session before, or if you've been to a few studio sessions or you're a regular, watch this video about studio etiquette, do's and don'ts. It's huge. There's lots of info in here and lots of gems.